If you liked the video, feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by. Adeptus Custodes Tips and Tricks Roundup. This video is a roundup of our tips and tricks for the Adeptus Custodes. Most of these tips are for the Adeptus Custodes with no detachment in mind. There are a few detachment only tips in here as well. A lot of these tips have been updated. I do have brand new slides for every tip. This video has tips and tricks for new players and advanced players. This is the last Custober 2025 roundup video. 30 plus tips and tricks for the Adeptus Custodes. Guardian Spear or Castellan Axe. The Guardian Spear has 5 attacks, hitting on a 2+, strength 7, AP 2, damage 2, wounding anything toughness 6 to toughness 4 on a 3+, anything toughness 3 or under on a 2+. Anything higher than toughness 7 will be on a 5+, which is most vehicle and monster units in the game. They are very good at killing anything toughness 7 and under. AP 2 and damage 2 in melee rips units apart. The Castellan Axe has 4 attacks, hitting on a 2+, strength 9, AP 1, damage 3. The highest strength and damage, but the lowest AP out of the 3 main weapons we can have. Only our shield captains, Alars, and Wardens can equip the Castellan Axe. The AP 1 is what hurts the axe. Terminators or Space Marine vehicles with Armor of Content will be saving on a 2+ or a 3+. We have looked at these weapon options and what is the strongest choice. That would be the Guardian Spears. The Castellan Axe with Ad Monte Mortis or equipping a Vexilla are the only exceptions. Yes, we can bring the axes up to AP 2 in the Shield Host detachment. They do become more reliable. The Guardian Spears will also raise to AP 3. And AP 3 can blend up a lot of units in combat. The axe has AP 1, the Sentinel Blades have damage 1, the Guardian Spear is mathematically better in most situations in the game with AP 2 and damage 2. -1 damage does cripple the spear's damage output though. The Custodian Guard or Lars can reroll wounds. Strength 7, AP 2, damage 2 Guardian Spears become anti-tank weapons with reroll wounds. It is why we see the Alars attached to a Lars shield captain with Ad Monte Mortis to get the Alars Custodian Slayer of Tyrants to reroll wounds into character, monster, and vehicle units. Custodes love reroll wounds. Hit on a 2+, reroll wounds pairs well with the Guardian Spear. The axe only has strength 9, AP 1. It makes it a subpar anti-tank option. Why not strength 10? Strength 10 would be a much better breakpoint. Until something changes, Guardian Spears are the best option for the Custodes. Next up is how to build a list. When I build a list, I try to select units from the following unit types: primary, utility, and attack. Now these are not a keyword we will find on the datasheet. This is my own category of units when I build a list. Primary to pressure objectives and score primary points. Utility to score secondary points as well as add some buffs or abilities to help out my other units. Finally, my attack units, the units I will use to attack the enemy scoring and damage dealing units. These may seem simple, but they can make a difference between a bad list and a good list. Too many attack units and we do not have enough primary units to hold objectives to score, then we lose the game on points. Not enough utility, we may have a good primary score, but still lose by a lot of points from no secondary scoring. Each faction and detachment will require a different mix of these units. It is not always a 33% of our total points, and each of these categories kind of fix. The Adeptus Custodes are a very elite army, only being beat by the Knights. This means we will not have a lot of units or even models on the board. Learning what each of these units are capable of is very important to the Custodes. We do not want to charge 2 units into a target, overkill it with the first unit only to have wasted the second unit's attacks. Or the opposite, charge 1 unit in where 2 would be needed to take out that enemy unit. I know some of the 10,000 do not like to use their Psykana units, but I promise you, if you start to include 2 units instead of 0, stick to it and you will notice a difference in your points for the better. Being so elite, we really need our units to have dedicated roles with a bit of flexibility. 40 to 50% of my Custodes list will be used on primary units. Units to push and hold objectives. We are an average 6-inch movement army. We will not be threatening the home objective turn 1. Another 20% of my points will be spent on utility units, while around 30% is on my attack units. Attack units are not as high priority since a lot of our Custodes infantry hit very hard in melee. The attack points could be spent on some long range damage or some fast damage units. Imperial allies are units from the Imperial Agent Codex that can be used in Imperial factions list as allied units. 1,000 points, we can take 1 character unit and 1 retinue unit. 2,000 points, and we can take 2 character units and 2 retinue units. Right now, the Custodes Assassin and Inquisitor Draxus are the 2 best Imperial Agent character units for the Adeptus Custodes. The Custodes has the uppy downy ability, great for scoring, as well as a +1 to the stratagem cost aura to enemy units within 12 inches. Inquisitor Draxus adds some very good anti-infantry devastating wound shooting that can really help the anti-infantry shooting of a Custodes list. Our next tip is know what your Adeptus Custodes units can kill. It seems like a simple concept, but with our small unit numbers, we can't afford to be bogged down in combat for multiple turns. Test out some rolls by yourself against some different common unit profiles. Knowing what we can kill in one activation with 1 unit, or what might need 2 units, or even to be avoided into a later turn in a game, this is crucial knowledge for the Custodes. If we charge a unit in hopes to kill it and then consolidate onto a nearby objective, it is a dice game of course, anything can happen. Having a rough idea of what units can reliably kill something will make a difference in how we approach situations during a game for the better. What about our Dreadnoughts? The Adeptus Custodes do have a detachment that does buff up our vehicles, the Solar Spearhead, and this does have 2 different parts. The first part is Orc Armor. While Adeptus Custodes vehicle unit from your army is at starting strength, unless that unit is an aircraft or battle shocked, add 2 to the objective control of models in that unit. And while Adeptus Custodes vehicle unit from your army is below starting strength, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, reroll a hit roll of 1. And the last part of Orc Armor, while an Adeptus Custodes vehicle unit from your army is below half strength, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, reroll a hit roll of 1 and reroll a wound roll of 1. Then we have the second part, Moritoi Ancients. Add 2 to the move characteristic of models and Adeptus Custodes Walker units from your army, and add 1 to the advance and charge rolls made for such units. Adeptus Custodes Walker units are our Dreadnought units. We can also add the character keyword to 2 of these Adeptus Custodes models, and that means we can give them enhancements and make one of them our Warlord if we want to. The extra OC is nice on our Dreads to help steal objectives. Once the vehicles are below starting strength, they get much more reliable. The Dreadnoughts hit on a 2+ in their shooting and melee. Unlike the Telamon Dreadnought, the Contemptor Dreadnoughts do not have a degraded or damaged profile. No matter the wounds remaining, they will hit on a 2+. The +2 movement brings the Telamon up to a base 10-inch move. An average 3-inch advance +1 brings the Telamon up to a 14-inch movement when advancing. Then if we use the advance and charge stratagem, Relentless Persecution, the Telamon will have an average 22 advance and charge range, while the Contemptors will have an average 20-inch advance and charge range. I will quickly go through our 4 Dreadnoughts. Our first Dreadnought is the Telamon Heavy Dreadnought. The Telamon is the toughest Dreadnought we have. Throw the Augury Uplink enhancement on it for a 5+ Feel No Pain, toughness 10 with 12 wounds with a 2-up save and a 4+ invulnerable with a -1 to the incoming damage ability. We can run multiple Telamon Dreadnoughts. Without the 5+ Feel No Pain enhancement, they are not as tanky. One Telamon is almost auto-include in many Solar Spearhead lists as a primary scoring unit. The Achilles in the Galatus Contemptor Dreadnoughts. The Achilles is more of an anti-tank Dreadnought, while the Galatus is more of an anti-elite infantry Dreadnought. The Galatus is the only Contemptor with a 2+ and 4+ invulnerable save. The Achilles and the Venerable Contemptor Dreadnought have a 2+ save with a 5+ invulnerable. The Galatus has a -1 to the wound roll and the fight phase ability, no matter the strength of the incoming attack. These can be a nightmare for enemy infantry units in the fight phase. Most infantry will be wounding this on a 5+. When we add that ability, they will be wounding these Galatus Dreadnoughts on 6s. Not as popular as the Telamon or the Venerable Dreadnought, these are still a great choice. Then we have the Venerable Contemptor Dreadnought. We want to use these Dreadnoughts to clear objectives and then hold those objectives against a counterattack. The Venerable Contemptor Dreadnought can shoot some melta shots and then bash some heads in with 5 attacks, hitting on a 2+, strength 12, AP2, damage 3. Unyielding Ancient is what makes this Dreadnought perfect for holding primary objectives and attacking enemy units. If it is killed, the first time it'll stand back up on a 2+ with D6 wounds remaining. Mono-phased lists will have a very hard time with these, if they can only take them out with either shooting or melee. I call these my zombie Dreadnoughts. Our next tip is plan for future turns. When I deploy my army, I like to already have a plan for my first turn. Which objectives am I going to try to move towards, and which secondaries am I primed to be able to achieve in turn 1. We do not want our units out of position or throw our units out in the open turn 1. Try to deploy where we can get on objectives turn 1 and score some possible secondary points. Turn 2 we can be a bit more aggressive and starting to get points by moving on to more objectives. Turn 2 we should be thinking of a plan for any units in reserves using Deep Strike or Rapid Ingress. Turn 3 or 4 will be my go turn. We need to have a plan for after using this big aggressive push. We should have a plan for when things go right or wrong. Does the opponent have units nearby to take the objectives back, or counterattack to possibly wipe out our units? Saving the Wardens 4+ Funeral Pain for a counterattack in turn 4 could make the difference between a loss and a win. Having our utility units alive for these later turns will be important to scoring late game points. Turn 5 is usually making sure we score max points and stopping the opponent from scoring. Points win games. Adeptus Custodes Go Turn. You may have heard of the term Go Turn before. What does it mean though? Our Go Turn is when we decide to be really aggressive with our army, while putting ourselves in potential dangerous areas if things go wrong. A Go Turn done wrong can see our army bounce off the enemy, then off to the slaughterhouse for us in the opponent's turn. A game that seemed to be on the verge of a win, lost in one turn/phase. There are some things to look for when setting up a Go Turn. Knowing how to stage our Custodes units will be key to a successful Go Turn. A Go Turn can be with melee units or shooting units. The goal of this tactic is to hurt the enemy army so much they will have a hard time scoring points, or take out the enemy attack threats to increase our late game scoring potential. The goal is to win the game. If killing the enemy army wins the game, then so be it. Use the Go Turn to put ourselves in a better position to win the game. Don't always go for the kill, go for the points. We are not invincible, but we are not easy to kill, for the most part. The Go Turn can be putting too many units for the enemy to handle onto objectives or other places to score points. Force hard choices onto your opponent. It can be offensive or defensive choices. How do I get these Wardens off the objectives while not exposing too much of my army? How do I score points when the Custodes have killed most of my army? Should I try to kill the Custodes or score points this turn? Should I redraw for 1 CP or save it for a stratagem? The Go Turn is to force those hard choices onto your opponent. The Go Turn is also almost always multiple activations across our army, staging our units to enable us to charge and shoot multiple units in the same turn. 3 9-inch charges that 2 of them fail is not a Go Turn. Multiple 6-inch or less charges backed up by infantry and grav tank shooting is the Go Turn. It needs to hit hard with real purpose, other than how many models can I kill. Should I take a Vexilla? What does a Vexilla do? The Vexilla will add 1 OC to every model in the unit. The Custodian Guard, Wardens, and Alaris are the only unit who can equip a Vexilla. Only 1 model per unit can equip a Vexilla. The Custodian Guard, an Alaris model equipped to the Vexilla, cannot equip a Guardian Spear or Castellan Axe along with the Vexilla. The Alaris must equip a Misericordia and Vexilla. The Custodian Guard equip a Vexilla, Misericordia, and Presidium Shield. That Presidium Shield does add 1 wound to the Custodian Guard. The Custodian Wardens are a little bit different. 1 model can equip a Vexilla and a Guardian Spear or Castellan Axe. Always equip a Vexilla in a Wardens unit. The Alaris are an attack unit, not a unit we want standing around objectives all game. They do not need the +1 OC. I want my Alaris unit hitting as hard as they can. With the Custodian Guard, 90% of the time, we want a Vexilla in the unit. OC3 Custodian Guard are great for stealing enemy objectives. What is From Golden Light? From Golden Light is an Alaris Custodian ability. Once per battle at the end of your opponent's turn, if this unit is not within engagement range of 1 or more enemy units, you can remove it from the battlefield and place it into strategic reserves. A great ability for a slow 5-inch movement unit. We can start the unit on the board, use the rule to remove it from the board, back into reserves. That is considered a reposition move. Repositions do not follow the arrive from reserve rules. You can arrive with Deep Strike turn 1, only if you go second though. That way at the end of the opponent's first turn, you pick them up from the board, put them in reserves, and then in your turn 1, you can drop these down with Deep Strike, but only if you go second. I would rather start them in reserves. rapid ingress them, and then use Golden Light to put them back into reserves to use rapid ingress again. I don't really like putting them on the board and banking on going turn 1 so I can pick them up in turn 1. I would rather have these in reserves and just rapid ingress them somewhere where I really need them. Next up is shoot first, ask questions later. This is more of a tip for the lines of the Emperor, but this can be used in most of our detachments. The detachment rule against all odds in lines of the Emperor adds +1 to hit and +1 to the wound in the shooting and the fight phase. Let's focus on the shooting potential. Guardian Spears, Castellan Axe, or the Sentinel Blades are all 2 shots each, hit on a 2+, strength 4, AP 1, damage 2. The Alaris Ballistus Grenade Launcher is D6 plus blast, hit on a 2+, strength 4, AP 1, damage 1. Damage 2 or a bunch of damage 1 shots, not bad, but the strength 4 is the problem. +1 to hit does not seem like much since we do hit on a 2+. It does help more than we may think at first. -1 to hit can really hurt our overall output. Smoke or stealth will be offset by that +1 to the hit roll. +1 to wound on strength 4 shooting is huge. We wound Space Marine profiles on a 3+ now, toughness 3 on a 2+, and any unit higher than a toughness 8 we will always wound on a 5+. Now we combine all of that with units who can re-roll the wound roll, such as Custodian Guard, Alaris Terminators, or Virtus Praetors. Custodian Guard can even shoot twice, once per game with Sentinel Storm. AP 1 could be better, but the Guardian Spears are killing most infantry models on a failed save. 5 failed saves is a dead Rhino or any other 10 wound vehicle monster. The Guardian Spears with damage 2 and +1 to the wound with reroll wounds, shoot first, ask questions later. Tactical or fixed. I prefer tactical, they add a bit more randomness to the game. Custodes can be weak at scoring secondary points with tactical if we do not bring the proper amount of utility units. They can be average to good if we bring the right units, as long as we try to set up for future draws while not sacrificing primary scoring. Fixed can work well with some factions. With our small unit count and average 6-inch movement, it will be easy to block us off from scoring our fixed secondaries. We do not want to telegraph what we'll be doing in our next turn. With those fixed secondaries and our slow movement, your opponent will definitely know what you're trying to do. Lone Operatives. Imperial Assassins are the main and for most detachments the only way to bring a lone operative unit in a Custodes list. The Lines of the Emperor detachment has an enhancement that gives a character model the lone op ability. It can't be targeted by ranged attacks unless within 12 inches. In my experience, lone operative units are better against shooting armies. Fast melee armies do not care that they can't shoot the lone operative outside of 12 inches, they'll just run up and charge it. The Custodes Assassin has an uppy-downy ability, along with Deep Strike, Fights First, and Lone Operative. She is the best Imperial Assassin lone op unit for the Adeptus Custodes. Great for scoring those secondary points in the late game like behind enemy lines, established locust, or even sabotage. The next tip is know your opponent. Knowing which units can kill Custodes with their shooting or melee is important. All of these and more can be answered by knowing your opponent. Can we move out and grab an objective or board control without being destroyed right away? Are my Warden units in danger? Should I use the 4+ Feel No Pain now, or should I save it for later? Can I kill this important unit with 1 activation of Custodes, or do I need 2 units? Does the enemy have mortal wounds damage potential, and how can I mitigate that? Knowing your opponent will help answer these questions and cause you to be more confident in your engagements with other armies. Psykana units and scoring. Why take Psykana units? The Anathema Psykana units are the cheapest unit available to the Adeptus Custodes. The Prosecutors are currently the cheapest. A 4-model unit is 40 points. Prosecutors are nothing special. A toughness 3, 1 wound, 3+ save model with a 3+ Feel No Pain to mortal wounds and psychic damage. They do have a sneaky 2 OC per model. If they are nothing special, why waste the 40 points for a unit? They can do things for 40 points that a unit of 200 points of Custodian Guard can do. Why use a Blade Champion Wardens unit to cleanse or recover assets when a Prosecutor unit can do the same thing for 40 points, allowing the Blade Champions unit to advance in charge into an important target. Prosecutors are great, if not the best cheap option to hold the home objective. No, they can't defend it by themselves every game. When they can, a 40-point unit to farm points all game is a win for me. How about the Witchseekers? I love the Witchseeker unit. They do cost a few more points than the Prosecutors. A 4 model unit is 50 points. Even though the points may change, Witchseekers have always been more expensive than the Prosecutors. They have an actual useful ability with a more situational ability. The ability I take the Witchseekers in my list for is that 6-inch Scout ability. Scout 6 inches is a great ability to start gaining points. The ability allows us to move the Witchseeker unit 6 inches after the first turn roll-off. My favorite tactic for the Witchseeker unit is scout it 6 inches towards the center of the board or towards my expansion objective. Enemy infiltrator units can block us from doing this. The opponent will not want to infiltrate their units too close to us in case we do get turn 1 and use them as a charged slingshot. Their other ability causes a battle shock test to one enemy unit hit by the ranged torrent weapon. It is that scout ability we want. They can help set up for early game scoring. A weakness of Custodes is early game scoring. Witchseekers can turn that weakness into a strength. Early objective control forces the enemy to get into charge range of our units a turn or two earlier than they wanted. Points win games. Another simple statement that can help win games. Casual games go for the fun and interesting plays. In a more competitive game, should we move off an objective to try to make a charge into an unimportant enemy unit, or pass on glory to complete a cleanse action instead for points? The answer is almost always points, instead of only trying to table the opponent. When we move our units in our movement phase or an out of movement phase, try to look to where we can move our units to score points instead of just killing stuff. Points win games. Next up we have screening. We may only have a small amount of units, even so screening is very important. What is screening? It is making sure we have models set up so when the opponent wants to bring in reserves, there is no room for them somewhere that they can gain some advantage. Unless the opponent has a stratagem, units must come onto the board at least 9 inches away from any of our models. This is important the most around our home objective. We do not want to leave room for the enemy to deep strike and then shoot or charge our home objective turn 2. Units in reserves must come on the board by the end of round 3. Unless a unit was placed into reserves after it was placed on the board, aka a reposition move, doing our best to take the time to make sure we've screened out any deep strikes until after turn 3 is important to us winning games. We have a small unit count, our turns are overall quicker than a larger unit army. Take advantage of being able to take more time when planning what to do with our Custodes units. Which Adeptus Custodes detachment is the best? Orc Champions and Null Maiden aren't really played that much, so we'll take a look at the more played detachments. We will take a look at 4 of our stronger detachments. At rank 4 we have Talons of the Emperor. I know Talons of the Emperor won the Warhammer World Championship. We can't base the detachment off that one great win. That was also in late 2024. We have had many changes to the game since then. There seems to be a lot more damage 3 in the game now, killing our expensive models with each failed save. The reactive movement stratagem in Talons of the Emperor has been around for a while now, and on different factions, players have learned to play around it. Talons is still a powerful detachment that can win casual and competitive games. It has one of the higher skill ceiling of all the 6 detachments. I find it lacks the survivability and damage needed for the current 10th edition Warhammer 40K. Rank 3 and Rank 2 are interchangeable, but for me, Solar Spearhead is my Rank 3. I put Solar Spearhead as my 3rd best detachment. I feel it is a bit more enemy list dependent. Rule support for the Caledius Grav Tank with advanced and charging Dreadnoughts have won this detachment many tournament wins. The detachment is a lot of fun while being strong. It looks a lot different model-wise on the tabletop than any of our other detachments. I will have no argument for anyone wanting to rank this as our number 2 detachment. Rank 2 and Rank 3 are both very strong. The number 2 detachment, at least for me, is the Shield Host. The detachment I recommend to new Adeptus Custodes players. It is also one of our more powerful detachments as we master the faction. It powers up almost all of our units with the detachment rule alone, while being an easy to use detachment rule. A few ways to keep our models on the board, the most important being a 4+ Feel No Pain to mortal wounds. A way to sticky objectives with Vigilance Eternal, the only sticky objectives in all 6 detachments. The higher skill and tournament placings depend on knowing the units well, plus using fast units like the Venatari, Virtus Praetors alongside the trusty Wardens. My number 1 detachment is Lines of the Emperor. This might be my golden tinted glasses. Lines of the Emperor is my current top detachment for the Adeptus Custodes. Since this was released earlier in 2025, it has a lot of our tournament wins. It is also the best detachment for list building. We can build the most different kinds of lists while still being powerful in their own way. The detachment rule against all odds gives +1 to hit and wound to our shooting and melee. It even works on our Psykana units, unlike the Solar Spearhead or Shield Host detachment rule. If you look at your Psykana unit datasheet, they are the Adeptus Custodes faction, outside of 6 inches of other friendly units, while being an Adeptus Custodes unit. We can make lists with very good infantry shooting or melee, or even a Psykana heavy list. A Leia with 10 Vigilators with +1 to hit and wound are dangerous. The GT winning lists have not been the same build either. Some have mostly infantry, some use the Caladius Grav tanks. Any of our Custodes characters can be justified to take in the Lions list. The tournament wins, fun factor, list building, model expense, and more. These are the reasons I have Lions of the Emperor as the best detachment for the Adeptus Custodes. Which detachment is the most fun to play? I think there are 2 answers for this. If you want to use the Adeptus Custodes vehicles, the Solar Spearhead is easily the most fun. The Dreadnoughts are a lot of fun to use in the Solar Spearhead. For an infantry or combined arms list, the Shield Host detachment is my pick for a pure fun detachment. The Shield Host detachment rule is simple: pick an army-wide combat buff, critical hits on 5+, or an extra AP on our melee weapons, good stratagems to support our units, as well as our best mortal wounds protection stratagem. Critical hits on a 5+ combined with sustained hits 1 equals more dice rolled, more fun. Use the bad units. Do not always play with the meta units. Casual games are a great chance to try out the bad units, although the amount of bad units in the codex is getting lower and lower. When I wrote the original version of this tip, Solar Spearhead had not been released yet. I had said I was using the Dreadnought some in case they ever get a movement buff or detachment. Turns out it was a good idea. Same for the Virtus Praetors. I used them quite a bit before they were buffed. We never know what will get buffed. It is good to try out the non-meta units time to time. Next up is Rapid Ingress and how to use it. Rapid Ingress at the end of your opponent's movement phase. 1 unit from your army that is in reserves, you can arrive on the battlefield as if it were the reinforcement step of your movement phase. And if every model in that unit has the Deep Strike ability, you can set that unit up as described in the Deep Strike ability. Restrictions: you cannot use this stratagem to enable a unit to arrive on the battlefield during a battle round it would not normally be able to do so in. Reinforcement step is either 6 inches from the board edge deployment depending on the turn, or as the updated rule states, we can bring in the unit using the Deep Strike ability. The restrictions in the stratagem keeps us from using this to bypass any of the reserve rules, 6 inches from the board edges or with Deep Strike. Some other common questions for Rapid Ingress: can I use an ability or stratagem on a unit in reserves? Yes. Can I use a CP reduction ability on Rapid Ingress, such as the Shield Captain's Strategic Mastery? The answer is yes. Can I use Arrive on Turn 1 abilities from reserves on Rapid Ingress? The answer is yes. So if you do have an ability or an enhancement that allows you to Deep Strike Turn 1, you can use this on Rapid Ingress. A unit in reserves is great for keeping your opponent on their toes. It also keeps some of their units out of the fight if they have to screen their back lines. Rapid Ingress will keep your opponent on their toes in their movement phase as well. We want our units in reserves to force mistakes or plays from your opponent they don't want to do. They may want to push a big deadly melee unit down to take the center from you, but doing that will open up a hole for you to Rapid Ingress a unit in and steal their home objective in our next turn. Force your opponent to make hard choices. The next tip is use Draxus and the Custodian Guard. The best anti-infantry shooting unit we have access to. Draxus has a shooting attack and a psychic attack. Both can be used in the same shooting phase. Dirge Singer is 4 shots, hitting on a 3+, strength 4, AP 0, damage 2, anti-infantry 4 with devastating wounds and assault. Her psychic attack, Psychic Tempest, is 6 shots, hitting on a 3+, strength 6, AP 0, damage 2 with sustained hits 2. The Lines of the Emperor detachment rule against all odds can add +1 to the hit and wound, and Draxus allows +1 to the hit, bringing those weapons from hitting on a 3+ to a 2+. Draxus range attacks pair very well with the Custodian Guard's abilities. Stand Vigil allows the unit to reroll wounds of 1, or the wound roll if we're on objective we control. Sentinel Storm gives the unit a once per game shoot twice ability, and since Draxus is in the unit, she will also gain the benefit from these abilities. The Custodian Guard abilities make the unit even more deadly. Reroll wounds of 1 or the wound roll if we're on objective we control, perfect for getting those 4+ anti-infantry 2 mortal wounds shot through. We can shoot Dirtsinger, Psychic Tempest, and the Guardian Spears twice in one phase, with a possible reroll wounds. 8 Dirtsinger shots, 12 Psychic Tempest attacks, and 20 Guardian Spear shots will do some insane damage to some enemy infantry units. Once again, in Lines of the Emperor, +1 to hit and wound from the detachment rule, every failed save or mortal wound is 2 damage. Tanks or no tanks. There is nothing else we have access to in the Custodes range that has such reliable anti-tank shooting as the Caladius Grav Tank. Even Knight allies do not have the same reliable guns. The Twin Arachnus Heavy Blaze Cannon has 4 shots, lethal hits against monster and vehicle units, strength 12, AP 3, damage D6 +2 with twin linked. There are some good all-infantry builds that can be played without armor support. This is a Forge World unit, a unit that would make a good amount of money if they made a plastic version. A fantastic unit for us, just a shame it is so hard and expensive to find for the average player. What if I don't have any Grav tanks? We do have a few options if we do not have the way overpriced Forge World Caladius Grav Tank. First option is to run all infantry list, but they are harder to pilot since they have way less room for mistakes, movement being the most important phase. With no anti-tank, the opponent's guns will be in every shot lane. We do have the Venerable Land Raider in the Codex, 4 last cannon shots hitting on a 2+ with the ability to transport 6 Adeptus Custodes models. We can also bring some Imperial Knight allies, the most popular being Canis Rex, to give a Custodes list some anti-tank shooting with some great melee threat. Next are some tips for Fight on Death. Fight on Death is another great stratagem to have for the Adeptus Custodes. Other than Alea and charging, we have no way to access fights first. It makes it hard to engage those units with fight first or threaten units who charge us. Defiant to the last for 1 CP gives us that Fight on Death option, 2+ on the character models or 4+ on non-character models, and Emperor's Vengeance and Solar Spearhead will give us a 3+ Fight on Death for a Dreadnoughts and a 4+ Fight on Death for a non-Dreadnoughts. There are some things to remember about Fight on Death. It does have some wording that makes some abilities work with Fight on Death, while others do not. Do not remove it from play. The destroyed model can fight after the attacking unit has finished making its attacks. The destroyed model can fight. This is what makes some abilities work with Fight on Death, while others do not. If the ability reads, each time a unit from your army with this ability is selected to fight, this ability cannot be used with Fight on Death since it is the model that is fighting. After the enemy unit has finished attacking, it just happens those models fight. The unit that those models are in is not being selected to fight. It's only those models. Those models who roll the 2+ or the 4+ to Fight on Death, those models fight, and then the units are selected to fight. What abilities do work with Fight on Death? Ongoing abilities such as Lines of the Emperor's detachment rule. Each time Adeptus Custodes model from your army makes an attack, if there are no other friendly units within 6 inches of that unit, add 1 to the hit roll and add 1 to the wound roll. Or the Alar Slayer of Tyrants ability, each time a model in this unit makes an attack that targets a character, monster, or vehicle unit, you can re-roll the wound roll. Notice how these do not have each time this unit is selected. That is the key to abilities working on Fight on Death. If the ability has something like each time a unit is selected, no, that's not going to work on Fight on Death like our Martial Kata, the sustain hits or lethal hits, because that is each time a unit is selected. Then we have each time a model in the unit makes an attack. So you're not selecting the model, it's just each time that model makes an attack. So those kind of abilities do work with Fight on Death. Which Martial Kata? Martial Kata is the Adeptus Custodes army rule. The unit needs to have the ability on their datasheet. Our Psykana units do not have the Martial Kata ability on any of their datasheets. When the unit is selected to fight, we can select between these 2 fighting stances. Dakatari stance, sustain hits 1, is what we choose anytime we'll be wounding an enemy on a 2+ or a 4+. Rendex stance for lethal hits is what we want on our weapons when we'll be wounding on a 4+ to a 6+. Adeptus Custodes wounds rerolls, steers a lot of these choices towards sustained hits 1. No rerolls and wounding on a 4, lethal hits can be used as well. Why is the Blade Champion used so much? We can answer that question with one word: speed. The Blade Champion adds some much needed speed to our Adeptus Custodes units. The Blade Champion gives the unit it is attached to reroll charges and a once per game advance and charge. Other than the Dreadnoughts and the Solar Spearhead detachment, this is the only way to get advance and charge in all 6 detachments in all of our units, Codex and Forge World. The Blade Champion also has one of the very few AP3 damage 3 melee attacks. In Lines of the Emperor, we can get +1 to the wound roll on the Blade Champion, and that really helps a Devastating Wounds melee profile. Strength 6 has always been the downside of the Blade Champion into monster and vehicle units. You either roll some 6s for Devastating Wounds or a bunch of failed wounds. With +1 to the wound, we will be wounding anything toughness 5 on a 2+, toughness 6 to toughness 11 on a 4+, and anything toughness 12 or higher on a 5+. This is why you see so many Blade Champions in the Lines of the Emperor detachment, and they do really well in the Shield Host detachment as well. The Blade Champion with Wardens, the Custodian Wardens have been the most used infantry in 10th edition. The reason for that is the abilities. They can equip the Guardian Spear with sustained hits 1 or lethal hits from our army rule. The abilities can make the Wardens into a walking tank. It can take a few games to figure out when to use the 4+ Feel No Pain. It has to be used at the beginning of the phase. The best place for this is the fight phase, where we know the opponent is going to be attacking the Wardens. Custodian Wardens or Custodian Guard. This was always an easy question to answer since our 10th edition Codex was released. Wardens, Wardens, Wardens. They were the best and still are the best unit we have for survivability. Both are best equipped with the Guardian Spears. We can put a Vexilla in the Wardens unit without dropping a spear. Most of the Custodian Guard units do have one Vexilla, Shield, and Misericordia in the unit. Let's take a look at the Custodian Guard and Wardens abilities. We will start with the Custodian Guard. They have Deep Strike, Martial Kata, Stand Vigil. Each time a model in this unit makes an attack, re-roll a wound roll of 1. While this unit is within range of an objective marker you control, you can re-roll the wound roll instead. Sentinel Storm, once per battle in your shooting phase. After this unit has shot, it can shoot again. Next up is the Custodian Warden abilities. Deep Strike, Martial Kata, Resolute Will. While a character model is leading this unit, each time an attack that targets this unit, if the strength of that attack is greater than the toughness of this unit, subtract 1 from the wound roll. Any incoming attack that's higher than strength 6, we will have -1 to the wound roll. Living Fortress, once per battle at the start of any phase, this unit can use this ability. If it does, the unit will have a 4+ Feel No Pain for the rest of the phase. We can see why the Wardens have been so popular. -1 to the wound roll with a 4+ Feel No Pain can be really hard to remove from the table. The Custodian Guard, however, have seen a resurgence in the Lines of the Emperor detachment, all because of the detachment rule. Against all odds, gives our Custodes unit +1 to hit and wound in the shooting or melee. This opens up the Custodian Guard to be a shooting unit and a melee unit. Reroll wounds of 1 or the wound roll on objective we control works in our shooting too. 2 shots from the Guardian Spears, AP1 damage 2, becomes way better with +1 to the wound roll, along with reroll wounds and a once per game shoot twice. Attach Draxus, Trajan, or Inquisitor to a Custodian Guard unit to make the shooting even better. I have a recent video in our What's Winning Right Now playlist that has a list with 3 Custodian Guard units and 0 Wardens that won a grand tournament. Dust those Custodian Guard off your shelf when we use the Lines of the Emperor. The question of Wardens or Guard has shifted from Wardens every time to you can use either. I absolutely love that. More unit variety is good for the Adeptus Custodes. Custodian Wardens are still fantastic, but it's nice to see that the Custodian Guard can be used. What is staging? Staging is important to any army. As an elite faction, it is a tool we should learn well. We do not have extra units to make a bunch of risky, low chance, high reward plays. Why risk a 9 to 12 inch charge turn 1 that if the charge fails, the unit will be shot off the board? Move the Custodian Guard in a line of sight blocking area of the board maybe 10 inches away. Try to place a unit where if the enemy wants to shoot the Custodian Guard, they have to move closer to us. All of a sudden in the following turn, those 9 to 12 inch charges are now 5 or less inch charges, much better and much more reliable. The same thing can be done with shooting units. Staging will make shooting in the lines of the Emperor much better. We may want Draxus and our Custodian Guard unit to cover an area of the board. Having our unit set up behind some line of sight blocking wall while on an objective is a good example. We do not want any units within 6 inches or close enough that if her unit steps through the wall to shoot an enemy unit, that she loses that +1 to hit and +1 to wound. Try to have it planned out so when we do move out to shoot some units in lines of the Emperor, we're not within 6 inches of other units and lose that +1 to hit and +1 to wound detachment buff. Staging is one of the tools used to make the movement phase the most important phase. The Adeptus Custodes are hard to remove from the table, but they are not invincible. A 2+ save with a 4+ invulnerable can only save so much. Start staging your units. Put more thought into the movement phase instead of relying on the Custodes' toughness. You will notice your win percentage start to go up. We can even do this to score points and movement in areas where in the next turn we can complete a secondary draw. Take notice of what you've already drawn and what can be drawn to plan around that. Prosecutors or Witchseekers. These two units are our best chaff and secondary units in our codex. The Prosecutors are 40 points for a 4-model unit, while the Witchseekers are 50 points for a 4-model unit. The Prosecutors are a great choice for a cheap unit to stand on our home objective. Of course, some games, 4 Psykana models will not be enough to hold the home objective all game. We may need to divert a unit in our list for those games. They are also our cheapest unit to do secondary actions or move block. Witchseekers are better for setting up first turn scoring or move blocking in aggressive army turn 1. They have the 6-inch scout ability, gives them a 6-inch movement after the armies have deployed and first turn has been decided. I prefer to have at least one Witchseeker unit in my list. I want to have one 6-inch scout towards the center objective in case I do draw area denial or secure no man's land or another secondary card that requires a unit in my army to be in the center of the board. Prosecutors for holding your home objective and maybe a secondary action or two, and have at least one Witchseeker unit in your list for that 6-inch scope move. When to use the Wardens 4+ Feel No Pain. This is a harder one. It depends on the opponent, faction, and game. If the enemy list is very heavy in one aspect, either shooting or melee, we want to save it for when we are being attacked by the big bads of those lists. We do not want to use our 4+ Feel No Pain on Karn and 10 Berserkers shooting at us with a plasma pistol and some bolt pistols, only not to have our 4+ Feel No Pain when Karn's unit charges the Wardens. We want to use the 4+ Feel No Pain to negate as much damage as we can. It is good to ask your opponent what is the damage of the weapons in their army. A few damage 1 attacks save the 4+ Feel No Pain. Damage 3 attacks incoming or multiple low damage, low AP attacks, a 4+ Feel No Pain can be the difference between losing a few models and losing the whole unit. 1 to 4 incoming damage 3 attacks, I may risk saving the 4+ Feel No Pain. 5+ incoming attacks, I would consider using the 4+ Feel No Pain. I don't want to save it only to die without using it. The last tip is the 10th edition Shield Captain. When our 10th edition codex was released, we also get a new Shield Captain model. It added a new loadout to our Shield Captain on foot. The new loadout for the Shield Captain is a Presidium shield with a Pyrethite Spear. The Pyrethite Spear, aka the Melta Spear, for the ranged attacks we have 12-inch range, 1 attack, hitting on a 2+, strength 9, AP 4, damage D6 with Melta 2. For the melee we have 7 attacks, hitting on a 2+, strength 7, AP 2, damage 2, the same profile as a Guardian Spear. The Presidium shield adds 1 to the bearer's wound characteristic. This is actually the best loadout for the Shield Captain now, giving the Shield Captain 1 extra wound with the same potent melee as a Guardian Spear, only with a Melta shot. I'm not gonna lie though, I was really hoping this would be a whole different datasheet, not just another version of a Shield Captain. Let's finish the video with some final thoughts. I hope these tips and tricks can help you win more games, or at least have some more fun during your games. The Adeptus Custodes can be an easy army to learn, but hard to master. The 2+ save and 4+ invulnerable is strong, but it will not win at the top end of competitive games. Standing on objectives and praying for this 4+ invulnerable will only get us so far. Use these tips and tricks to spice up your Custodes game. Subscribe for battle reports, list videos, and other Warhammer 40K content. Channel members gain early access to videos and access to our channel Discord. Like always, thanks for watching, thanks for stopping by.